Hey guys, today we slip beneath the surface. Literally. No metaphors here. You're descending into the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, where the water thickens into a shifting blue, and the light above gets filtered like a badly tuned Instagram preset. Somewhere below, tucked 62 feet deep, is Aquarius Reef Base, the only undersea research station of its kind. You're about to live there. You, a person who probably gets mildly annoyed when your socks are a little damp, are going to spend days inside a glorified scuba tank the size of a small RV. You probably won't survive this. Not because of sharks, or pressure sickness, or the terrifyingly casual mention of fire risks underwater. Yes, that's a thing. But because your brain might quietly implode, trying to balance your breakfast cereal while watching parrotfish flirt outside the window. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into today's journey together. You're bobbing in the ocean, scuba tank strapped on, a dive master tapping your shoulder as he points downward toward what looks like a very odd underwater trailer. Aquarius doesn't shout for attention. It's not sleek or sci-fi. It's stubby, pilled white paint, coral nipping at the corners, two metal legs holding it up like a spaceship forgot to finish landing. You descend. It gets quiet in a new way. Even your own breath sounds like it doesn't belong here. You approach the moon pool, the belly of Aquarius, where divers enter. A hatch leads up into the habitat. Your fins scrape a wall as you pull yourself inside, awkwardly, like trying to climb into a hammock without flipping it. Your head breaches the surface of warm water into humid, thick air. And then the smell hits, a mix of machinery, damp socks, and instant coffee. Welcome home. The inside is cramped. You don't walk so much as rotate sideways and hope for mercy. There's a main chamber, a bunk room with 6 fold-down beds that feel more like padded MRI trays, and a small galley where the world's worst microwave is quietly potting against your sanity. And the walls, oh, the walls, they hum constantly. Pumps, air regulators, CO2 scrubbers, backup systems you pray you never hear kick in. Everything makes noise. You won't hear silence again until you surface days from now. Your instructor points to a laminated sheet. Daily oxygen levels, nitrogen loading times, emergency drill schedules. Then, with a grin, he slaps the wall and says, "She's held for over 30 years. You'll be fine." Which is exactly what people say before you're not fine. To be fair, Aquarius really has seen it all. Operated by Florida International University, it's been the site of reef studies, conservation training, astronaut simulation missions, you name it. NASA uses it to prepare for space travel, which should say something. The idea is, if you can handle a week in here without losing your mind or accidentally releasing a sea urchin into your sock drawer, you might be cut out for Mars. Historically, Aquarius replaced older, weirder underwater habitats, like the Sea Labs of the 1960s, projects with big Cold War energy and zero regard for personal comfort. One such lab, Sea Lab 2, literally had a pet parrot named Tuffy, who was trained to deliver messages. Historians still argue whether Tuffy was a legitimate asset or just a Cold War mascot that made everybody feel less like they were losing it under 200 feet of pressure. But Aquarius is different. You're living on the seafloor, but it's not deep enough to need a sub to reach. What's interesting is how your body adapts. Your voice sounds higher to you. You breathe heavier. You sweat like it's your part-time job. And the pressure inside matches the water outside. So when you need to leave, you can't just pop back up. You have to decompress, or your blood will turn fizzy like a shaken soda. You are now a creature of the deep, however reluctantly. You settle into your bunk, top bunk, congratulations, and realize there's no real privacy. Every burp echoes. Every move creaks the whole wall. You stare at the small porthole and try not to think too hard about the concept of watertight integrity. Just a few inches of metal and glass between you and a school of angelfish, who definitely aren't worried about structural fatigue. Out the window, the reef is alive. Fans sway lazily. Blue tangs dart like they're late for a meeting. A passing barracuda does a slow U-turn and stares straight at you, like it's waiting for you to blink first. You do. I think it's the same thing going down to you. I heard. Later, over instant noodles and tepid water, your crewmate casually brings up the time a moray eel bit a diver's mask and refused to let go for 15 full minutes. Someone else mentions that sea spiders are real and bigger than you think. Quirky fact? One researcher here once lost their toothbrush to a curious octopus. It was never seen again, probably used now to exfoliate crustaceans. The lights dim automatically at 10 p.m. There's no sunrise or sunset down here, just mechanical rhythms and your increasingly unreliable circadian clock. You lie there, staring at the ceiling just a few inches above your nose, listening to bubbles gurgle outside like a weird lullaby. You close your eyes, try to breathe slow. Someone snores. A pump kicks on. You swear you hear something scuttle on the exterior wall. You tell yourself it's probably just shrimp. Definitely shrimp. Sleep comes in weird fragments. Not like up there, where time feels vaguely linear. Down here, your dreams melt into the hum of CO2 scrubbers, and your body's convinced it's been marinating in a steam room for 10 years. You wake up at 3:17 a.m., or what your dive watch claims is 3:17 a.m., dash to the gentle thunk of someone floating toward the bathroom chamber. Yes, floating. No, walking here. You sort of drift like a sea cucumber with a purpose. The bathroom is a capsule-sized chamber with a hose, a metal toilet seat bolted to the floor, and an overwhelming sense of shared vulnerability. The toilet doesn't flush so much as whoosh, and if the suction kicks in late, you'll learn to appreciate gravity in a whole new way. Back in the galley, someone's already made watery coffee. You clutch the mug and huddle near the microwave, which is heating a suspicious egg-like product. Everything smells like condensation and Tupperware. You chew with effort, wondering how astronauts cope. Then someone drops their food. It drifts gently down, like a piece of chicken-flavored shame, landing against the wall with a sad plop. No fifth rule here, just guilt. As you suit up for the first dive of the day, your body remembers that you're technically saturated. That means the nitrogen in your blood is at equilibrium with the pressure around you, hence why you can't just swim up to the surface without decompression. But the trade-off? You can stay out on the reef for hours. That's the magic of Aquarius. No quick dips, no rush. You're essentially a fish with a clipboard now. Your first dive is all about transects, laying out measuring tapes and documenting coral health. You push off from the moon pool, gliding through warm turquoise water, clipboard velcroed to your forearm, and a pencil zip-tied to your wrist, like a medieval scribe with poor life choices. The reef, for hours. That's the magic of Aquarius. No quick dips, no rush. You're essentially a fish with a clipboard now. Your first dive is all about transects, laying out measuring tapes and documenting coral health. You push off from the moon pool, gliding through warm turquoise water, clipboard velcroed to your forearm, and a pencil zip-tied to your wrist, like a medieval scribe with poor life choices. The reef rises before you like a dreamscape, sea fans undulating like slow applause, damselfish darting between outcrops, and oh look, there's a Caribbean reef shark keeping a very casual 10-foot distance. You wave politely. It does not wave back. About 20 minutes in, you see it, a sea spider, and you wish you hadn't. It's technically a pycnogonid, and yes, it looks like someone gave that a long-legged scuba gear. It moves slowly over coral with jointed grace, and you mentally recalculate how far you are from the habitat, in case it turns out to be the kind that eats dreams. Inside Aquarius, the marine biologists are logging data, fixing instruments, and trying not to spill water on their laptops. One researcher is gluing tiny tags to individual coral polyps. Another is adjusting sensors for temperature and salinity. You're taking notes and trying not to float into the ceiling like a lost balloon. Daily life in Aquarius is a mix of science, sweat, and strategic avoidance of eye contact while wearing compression tights. You hang your wetsuit in the small dry area, which is neither dry nor an area. You munch protein bars like they're fine cuisine, and learn how to ration M&Ms with military precision. There are protocols for everything. Brush your teeth. Spit carefully so it doesn't gloop onto a control panel. Shave? Not recommended. The tiny hair clippings just hover around like lost souls. One aquanaut once sneezed during a dive prep, and it took 20 minutes for the particles to stop orbiting the kitchen area. There's no such thing as a way down here. Just over there in someone else's problem. Still, you find rhythms. Clean air checks, dive logs, maintenance rounds. You even start giving names to the outside creatures. Frank is the grouper that hovers by the moon pool. Delilah is the octopus that changes color when you turn on your dive light. Greg is a sponge, but emotionally he's part of the team now. Historically, the ocean outside Aquarius is one of the most studied reef zones in the Western Hemisphere. Marine biologists have been documenting coral bleaching here for decades. In 1998, a severe bleaching event wiped out much of the local elkhorn coral. Since then, projects from Aquarius have monitored the slow, painful recovery and argued fiercely about the role of warming currents, pollution, and even sunscreen ingredients in this decline. Historians still argue whether human interventions have helped the reef, or just slowed its inevitable unraveling. And yes, that includes weird fringe experiments, like dosing corals with probiotics. There's also the time a researcher blasted Barry Manilow music to test whether sound frequencies affected fish behavior. Results were inconclusive, but the fish allegedly now hate Copacabana. You suit up again for a twilight dive. This time, it's to place a temperature sensor near the reef wall. The ocean shifts colors. Blue deepens to navy. Shadows stretch longer. This is when the night crew comes out. Bioluminescent jellies pulsing in the dark, brittle stars inching across the sand, and a school of squid that flash warning colors when you get too close. You move slower. Everything feels both ancient and alien. Back in Aquarius, the power flickers briefly, just long enough to make everyone pause mid-chew. Then it hums back. The backup system kicked in, like a loyal, slightly resentful butler. Someone mutters something about battery levels. You finish your meal quietly. That night, you lie awake in your bunk, mentally replaying every sound. Clicks from shrimp, whirs from pumps, the odd thump of something brushing the habitat wall. Maybe a curious turtle. Maybe Greg the sponge fell over. You think about how small the habitat really is. Just 43 feet long, 9 feet wide, and every inch of it is borrowed space. Rented from a world that doesn't particularly care whether you're comfortable or not. Still, here you are, floating between science and survival, trapped in a steel cylinder, sharing coffee with strangers, watching the ocean breathe around you like some enormous, sentient planet. And weirdly, you're kind of okay with it. You wake to the rhythmic hiss of the air compressor and the sound of someone snoring like a malfunctioning aquarium filter. Your face is stuck to your pillow with condensation, and your arm is half-numb from sleeping like a curled shrimp. It's hard to tell if it's morning, or if your brain is just pretend it is. Time down here gets stretchy. Its bows making mess. You're somewhere between Tuesday and moonbeam o'clock. Today's a big day. You're joining the team on a simulated emergency egress drill. Basically, what to do if the power fails, oxygen levels drop, or the habitat decides it's tired of pretending it's a building and remembers it's just a metal tube underwater. You're not actually in danger, but the procedures are taken seriously. It's like being in a fire drill while wearing flippers and watching fish spectate. Everyone suits up. Lights are dimmed. Checklists are passed around like sacred scrolls. Initiate low-power protocol, someone mutters while flicking switches that click with alarming finality. You can hear your own heartbeat louder than usual. Part nerves, part pressure. You're assigned the oxygen scrubber station, because apparently your last dive log showed solid attention to detail, and not, as you suspected, mild panic writing in waterproof pencil. The drill begins. A fake alert sounds. Emergency lights flicker red, casting eerie reflections across the moon pool. It feels cinematic, except nobody here is. Bruce Willis, and there's no explosion budget. You secure valves, tighten seals, radio the surface team in clipped code. The goal? Stay calm, react fast, trust the checklist more than your instincts. You pass. No leaks, no tears, no overly dramatic freakout. Just another routine rehearsal in a place where routine is what keeps you breathing. And that's when someone reminds you, astronauts train here for space missions. NASA sends aquanauts, scientists, engineers, future crew of Mars, to this exact habitat because life in Aquarius mimics isolation, pressure, and logistical madness of space. The NEMO missions, NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, happen here. They wear mock spacesuits, practice delayed communications, and simulate Martian EVAs, only with more jellyfish. Imagine this: you're suited up, tethered to the reef, with a 20-minute communication delay between you and mission control. You ask if you can proceed to sample coral. The reply comes back 20 minutes later, which means if you get chased by an angry moray eel in the meantime, your support team will learn about it long after it's chewed your dive log. The psychological component is just as real. Small living quarters, limited contact, delayed responses, a freezer full of dehydrated stroganoff, the kind of conditions where even mild snacking sounds become a federal offense. One NEMO participant admitted he fantasized about silent potato chips. Another confessed to having long conversations with a laminated fish ID chart named Stan. Historians still argue whether the crossover between underwater habitats and space training began out of scientific alignment or just budget overlap. But the bond is now permanent. Every future spacewalk owes something to these awkward, bubble-footed strolls across coral beds. You head out on another dive, this time to repair a malfunctioning sensor array that's gone quiet. This one's positioned just beyond the usual work zone, deeper into the reef, where the colors start to fade and the temperature drops subtly. Your dive buddy signals the path with a gentle flick of the hand. You both drift in unison, weightless and hyper-aware. Suddenly, the reef seems quieter. Fish scatter with a little too much urgency. You stop, look right, and freeze. There's something large in the distance. There's something large in the distance. Hard to see through the particulate haze. Could be a Goliath grouper, could be a nurse shark, or maybe something else entirely. It doesn't move like the others, just hovers, watching. You blink, it vanishes. No big deal. Just another entry for the things I'll pretend I didn't see log. Your body nudges you. Back to work. The array is tangled in seaweed and calcium buildup. You scrape gently with a plastic tool, mindful not to damage nearby coral. You check the signal relay. Restart the node. There's a green blink. Success. You glance over your shoulder, half expect the presence to still be there. It's not. Just a curious school of jacks looping behind. You like an accidental escort service. Back in Aquarius, you log the dive and mention the sensor fix, but leave out the spooky silhouette. No sense getting a nickname like Ghost Diver. Besides, down here, everyone has one weird story. One diver claimed to hear Morse code in his headset that didn't come from the surface. Another swore a lionfish winked at him. You chalk it up to pressure, fatigue, or Neptune playing games. You pull your logbook from its Velcro pocket and jot notes by hand. Old school. Reliable, and maybe a tiny protest against how much of life is digital. You draw a bad stitch of the array and label it fixed dashes hedge. Somewhere behind you, someone is diggling over a packet of freeze-dried pudding that leaked inside a locker. It now smells like chocolate regret. Dinner is shared quietly. A pasta potch is split 3 ways. Someone's birthday is celebrated with a match lit sideways, like a candle, until it fizzles out in the humidity. It's kind of beautiful, and a little sad. One aquanaut shares a story about an old Aquarius mission where the carbon dioxide scrubber failed temporarily, forcing a partial evacuation. Nobody was harmed, but it served as a reminder. This place is alive with risk. You're surrounded by ocean. You're living at the mercy of plumbing, pressure, and prayer. That whirring sound you hear when you fall asleep, it's not white noise, it's your actual life support. You take a moment to stand in front of the small porthole, peering out into the times of streams, but one repraising Sam, dark. Fish drift by, like slow thoughts. Tiny shrimp blink phosphorescent green. The reef stretches on forever, A silent kingdom that doesn't care whether you're amazed or terrified. And somewhere out there, maybe still watching, is that shape you saw earlier. You don't mention it. You just press your palm to the grass, feel the cool pressure on the other side, and tell yourself it was nothing. It's your last full day inside Aquarius. By now, the smell of damp neoprene and canned ravioli has become something like home. You've stopped flinching when you bump your head on the same ceiling pipe, though your scalp has a permanent dent to prove it. You've memorized the whine of the air scrubber, the pattern of the lights flickering during power resets, and the personality quirks of every single screw in your bunk. Greg the sponge hasn't moved, but you still greet him like a neighbor every morning. Today isn't about drills or data collection, it's about reflection. You glide out of the moon pool for what might be your final dive here, and for the first time you're not clutching a clipboard or counting polyps. You're just existing, floating, watching. The reef seems to sense your shift in mood. A school of silverside splits like living glitter when you pass. A sea turtle lazily flaps by, utterly unimpressed with your buoyancy skills. Even the sergeant majors aren't biting today, which is suspicious in itself. You drift along the coral ledge, eyes tracing the endless solid shirt. Textures, lace corals, encresting sponges, a brittle star curling into shadow. The ocean isn't silent, but it knows how to whisper. Somewhere near the outer slope, your dive buddy gestures. Look there. In the sand lies the vague outline of a wrecked hull, half swallowed by seagrass. It's not marked on your map, probably one of dozens of forgotten vessels scattered near the quays, casualties of storms or smugglers, or just bad luck. You kneel beside it and run a gloved hand over the timber, smooth, worn, unnamed. You remember that in 1733, a hurricane scattered an entire Spanish treasure fleet along this coast. Ships loaded with silver and gold went down, and salvages still hunt them centuries later. Pieces have turned up just miles from here. Historians still argue whether the fleet was cursed, or just the victim of poor weather forecasting and too much optimism. Down here, they all look the same, just bones in the sand. Back inside Aquarius, the atmosphere is different, quieter. Even the jokes are softer. Someone passes around a notebook and asks you to write your exit quote. It's a tradition. Past entries range from poetic to ridiculous. You choose your words carefully, something between gratitude and survival. There's a knock on the pressure hull, a real one. 2 taps, then 3. You freeze for half a second before someone laughs. It's the surface team prepping for your decompression schedule. Standard procedure. But your heart takes an extra beat to calm down. Every Aquarius mission has a little moment like that. Something just off enough to remind you that you're not built for this place, even if you've adapted. You pack your gear, fold your soaked clothes, strip your bunk, tuck your dive log into your bed like it's a souvenir from a parallel reality. And then you wait, because decompression is serious. You can't just pop to the surface like a core. Your body is full of gas, literal nitrogen. If you rise too fast, that gas expands in your bloodstream and turns lethal. So, you sit, you breathe, you watch the numbers tick down on the monitor like a slow countdown to normalcy. While you wait, you learn stories from previous crews. One researcher once smuggled a ukulele into the habitat and serenaded the reef through the moon pool. Another claims to have seen a massive squid hover near the window, so big it darkened a light, then disappeared. No one believed them. Or maybe they did. Down here, the ocean decides what you remember clearly and what becomes legend. Your team leader pulls out a tablet with a grainy video clip from 2009, when a tropical storm merely took Aquarius offline. Water currents surged, moorings strained, and the crew inside rode it out like a haunted submarine. They say the habitat groaned like it was alive. Equipment got tossed. Dives were halted, but the structure held, just barely. There's a deep reverence in that memory, like survivors whispering about a storm god. The sun is setting far above. You can't see it, but the color of the water shifts ever so slightly. Blue to darker blue to ink. Someone dims the interior lights, and for a moment the portholes glow with the shimmer of moonlight bouncing through the sea. You take one last walk, drift really, through the habitat. Trace your fingers along the hatchway. Nod at the CO2 scrubber that hasn't failed you. Thank the backup battery with a polite tap. Sit for a moment at the galley table and listen to the walls hum. The reef outside watches you go, just like it watched you arrive. Indifferent, ancient, patient, and then, slowly, you rise. The decompression chamber seals behind you with a hydraulic sigh. You feel lightheaded, but not dizzy, just untethered. Like you've unclicked from a strange little universe. The first breath of fresh air on the surface tastes wrong. Too thin, too crisp. You miss the humid press of the habitat, the muffled echoes, the slow ballet of gear and intention. Back on land, people will ask what it was like. You'll say, amazing, or weird, or wet, depending on your mood. But inside, you'll always remember the feeling of the reef outside your window, the shape in the dark, and the quiet miracle of waking up alive inside a metal bubble surrounded by water. Because the ocean keeps secrets. And now, so do you. You're back on land now, but your ears still ring with the echoes of regulators and distant shrimp clicks. Your clothes no longer cling with seawater, but your dreams might, for a little while. The stillness of your room feels unnatural after so much humming, so much constant motion outside glass. You close your eyes, and for a split second, imagine the reef again. Gentle waves of light bending across coral spines, a grouper's blank stare, the slow roll of breath through a regulator. There's a strange kind of peace that comes from being submerged, a forced focus, a necessary simplicity. You had no signal, no errands, no scrolling. Just life, reduced to air, food, movement, and meaning. Everything softens when you're that deep. Your thoughts, your time, your sense of self. You were just another creature below the surface, trying to understand a world that doesn't need understanding. And now that you're back, the surface feels a little louder. A little too fast, but that's okay, because some part of you will carry that hum, that rhythm of currents and pressure and pause into the chaos above. And when things get loud again, maybe you'll remember how the reef moved and how your breath slowed to match it. Sleep well tonight. You've earned it. End of script. You've great today.